This episode of the Europuck podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. This weekend's UFC 262 is sure to be a can't-miss event, and every punch, kick, or knockout means so much more with a DraftKings lineup. The official daily fantasy partner of the UFC, DraftKings is offering all customers a shot at millions of dollars in total prizes for this weekend's fight. If you haven't tried it yet, Fantasy MMA is really easy to play, folks. Just pick 6 different fighters, stay under the salary cap, and watch as your choices pile up points for advances, takedowns, and so much more. There's no better way to put your UFC knowledge to the test, and you could take home your share of millions of dollars in total prizes. So it really is a win-win, guys. Download the DraftKings app now and use promo code THPN to be in with a chance to win millions of dollars in total prizes. That's code THPN for your shot at millions of dollars in total prizes only at DraftKings. A big thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring this episode. Hello, bonjour, hello, hi, heya, and privyet, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Europuck podcast, the show where two Brits talk all things European hockey as part of the Hockey Podcast Network, brought to you by DraftKings. My name is Hayden, or Oddman Rush, as you can see on the video version there, and joining me once again is Chris Gadsby. Hello, Chris. How are you today?
Yes, not too bad, not too bad. The garden excavation, shall we say, is almost finished.
Good.
There's like a tiny amount left, but I've basically filled the second skip as well.
Wow, okay.
But by the time we record next week, it will be finished because the skip goes on Tuesday, so it has to be done by then, whether I like it or not.
Fair enough. So it sounds like you're really gutting it, like completely.
There is a big difference.
Wow.
Yes, I could probably find a picture, but I've had to clear a lot of space. A lot of concrete has gone.
Wow.
It's significant changes, shall we say?
Oh, good. I mean, you know, it's your house now. Do what you want with it. Absolutely. So this is our second time trying to record this. Because we tried to record it.
If you were going to mention it or not.
You know, I may as well. It's something for us to talk about because you'll find out as we go through the episode. This one's going to be a bit of a shorter one compared to our most recent episodes because, there's not really a huge amount to talk about because as of this week, domestic hockey within Europe has completely finished. There's no more domestic competitions taking place. We're going to talk you through the end of the Swedish League, the Finnish League, the Finnish Liga, and the German League. And then that's it, because all of the countries are, of course, getting ready for the World Championships, which takes place in about 10 days' time, or it starts in about 10, 12 days' time, something like that. So
8.
Is it 8 days? Is it only 8 days?
A week tomorrow.
Wow,
a week
okay.
Tomorrow,
I could have sworn it started on the 22nd. Maybe that's just me. But anyway, regardless, so that's coming up very, very soon. And so all of the European leagues wanted to make sure that their domestic leagues were finished so their best players could go off to the World Championships because unlike the NHL, the Stanley Cup playoffs runs through the World Championships and in a normal year, obviously this year's a bit different, but in a normal year, most of the teams that are either out of the playoffs to begin with, they didn't clinch a berth, or the first or second round of the playoffs, teams that start to get eliminated from that, players from those teams often go and play in the World Championships. Whereas the kind of the European schedule, they stop before the World Championships begin so that then they can send all their best players over because obviously the NHL has a lot of Americans and Canadians and there's obviously the argument, it's not the best rosters out there because loads of them are still playing in the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, it's still a great tournament.
It's almost like a leveler though, isn't it? Because if you had like the best Canadian players and the best American players all the time, they'd wipe the floor with they wiped the floor with like Germany and Latvia and us anyway. But it's almost a bit of a leveler when you've got the countries that have got the best players to choose from, but they can't choose the best players because they're still in the NHL playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it gives everyone else in Europe a chance. And to be fair, like there's some great players in Europe as we've highlighted throughout this entire season. But
and I think because the World Championships come every year. So if you are let's say, for example, a Connor McDavid, the chance for you to go deep into the playoffs and win the Stanley Cup is much less often than to go to the World Championships, which are every single year.
Yeah.
So you're always, even as a player, you're always going to preference your team over the country, I think, in that respect.
Absolutely. Especially if they're a star player. It's like, oh, our team didn't make the playoffs, I'm going to get an invite to the World Championships. Or if Conor McDavid was like, I want to go play for Team Canada, considering he's scored over 100 points this season, they'd be like, yeah, you're the first line player, you're the captain of the team, like, welcome aboard, you know? So it's kind of, yeah, the chance to win the Stanley Cup may come once in a lifetime, but for a lot of these star players in the NHL, the chance to represent their country at the World Championships or even the Olympics might come more frequently than, I mean, some of these players never make the Stanley Cup playoffs, some of these players never win the Cup, so... You know, like winning World Championship gold is kind of the next best thing, or one of the next best things. But long story short, this is our second time trying to record this. It's Thursday, the 13th of May. So we're very close to when this actually goes out, so that's good. We've got all the relevant information. We pushed it back to yesterday, which was Wednesday the 12th. And we found out that a load of breaking news had taken place, so we were really happy because we're like, okay, right, we've got some stuff to talk about this week. But then my computer crashed, decided to crash halfway through our recording yesterday, so we're going to try and give it another go. Hopefully it holds up, but like we said, it's probably going to be a shorter episode this week because we've only got 4 leagues to talk about and only a couple of games in those leagues. Then we'll talk you through the Champions Hockey League because all of the teams have been decided. Chris has been doing a little bit of research into the draw that's taking place next week, which we are doing a live stream for, aren't we, Chris?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, we're going to try and do us, basically next week's episode, we're going to try and do the Champions Hockey League draw, which, you know, Chris and I are really looking forward to. We missed it this last year, so it'll be nice to have that back and on our screens for next season. And yeah, I feel like that's all we've got really to talk about this week, so we may as well just jump into it. So let's go and check out the Swedish Hockey League first. So there's not really any particular order in terms of how far through the playoffs any of these leagues are, because all 4 of them are done at this point, so we're just going to take you through them in kind of their ranking in the European hockey ladder. So the Swedish Hockey League is often considered one of, if not the best European league, except the KHL maybe, but even some of their teams aren't in Europe. So the Swedish Hockey League, let's talk about them. So where we left off last week, the Växjö Lakers, the first seed in the regular season, were playing against Rögle, who were the second seed, in the Swedish Hockey League finals. Now, that was wrapped up quite quickly after we finished after we finished recording and after last week finished, because though both of the teams had pretty identical runs in the postseason up until this point, both of them swept their first opponent in the quarterfinal round, both of them went to 5 games in the semi-final round. Once they made it to the finals, the Växjö Lakers, they just took their game to a completely different level. Didn't matter that they were playing the second highest ranked team in the entire league this year. The Växjö Lakers, they managed to win the Swedish Hockey League Championship, playoff championship I should add, as well as the regular season championship, thanks to a 5-game series, 4-1 against Rögle BK. So, Chris, do you want to just update us on the games that took place between last episode and this episode and any notable things we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, so when we recorded last week, it was 2-0 to Växjö in the best of 7 series. Rögle then pulled one back, and they won by 5-1 in Game 3. Quite a significant victory for them to make it 2-1. But then Växjö were just able to kind of turn the tables. They won, I believe it was in overtime. Yes, in overtime. To go 3-1 up in the series. And then the final game was 6-2, which feels like a bit of a whitewash. But what you've got to remember is that Rögle, with nothing to lose, when they were, 3-1 down, pulled their netminder with a little under 6 minutes to go. And then Växjö got an empty net goal. They pulled the netminder again, being 3 goals down. They got another empty net goal at 15-12. So yeah, empty net with 6 minutes to go. That kind of put the nail in the coffin there at 5-1. Then just a minute and a half later, in case the coffin wasn't nailed shut enough already, they became 6-1 with yet another goal. They scored 4 goals in 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
In the final period to really just hammer home the Swedish title. Yes, Rögle got one back towards the end, but to be honest, it was those 4.5 minutes that just completely killed the game off for Rögle, and Växjö win the series 4-1.
Absolutely, and it just goes to show you why the Växjö Lakers were the first seeded team going into the playoffs in the first place. Like I said, doesn't matter if they're playing the second seeded team or the 6th seeded Åbro, who did give them a pretty good run for their money in the semi-final round. But the Växjö Lakers, they could turn it on a dime and get the job done, which is what you want from a championship winning team, that it doesn't matter which opponent they're playing against, they know how to to kind of put on the pressure and get the victory. So congratulations to the Vexure Lakers for winning both the playoff and the regular season championships. Obviously, Rögle BK, it sucks for them. They were basically the bridesmaid in the regular season and the playoffs. Couldn't quite get it done, but they will be getting a place in the Champions Hockey League next year, which, is a pretty decent consolation prize. I'm sure many other teams around Europe would like to have that consolation prize as well. And obviously, we're going to take you through the Champions Hockey League in more detail after we've looked at the full leagues, but just highlighting, some of the teams that are making it in there before we take a look at the whole list. So let's move on to the Finnish Liga now. Only a couple of leagues left to go. And where we left the Finnish Liga off was once again in the playoff finals, where the first seed Lukko was taking on the third seed TPS Turku. We'd recently, I think was it just before we recorded last week, Chris, the third place game had been played, or it was in the midst of being played?
The third place game was being played as we recorded.
Right.
And if you remember, I called it with a period to go because Helsinki was 7-0 up.
Yes, I remember.
It finished 7-1. Tappara did get one goal back in the third period.
Well, that's
but
nice.
Yeah, it was 7-0 to Helsinki after two periods, so we kind of called that one. And then the final between Lukko and TPS Turku it started after we recorded last week, all run and done in a week. Best of 5 series. And although Turku took the first game by 4-1, after that, Lukko just completely, flipped a switch and were just dominant from then on. They held Turku to 3 goals in 3 games, averaging a goal a game. You're not going to win many games doing that. The aggregate in that kind of what I'll call 3-game mini series was 13-3 in favour of Lukko.
Wow.
So they really just turned it up. There's not really much more you can say. Lukko, they won the regular season, coming up against the third seed after Turku did well to get past Helsinki in 4 games. But Turku just didn't have enough left in the tank, really.
Absolutely. And so the final kind of standings for the playoffs, or the final standings in the Finnish Liga, the first seed finished first with the regular season and playoff championship. So congratulations to Lukko, similar to the Vexure Lakers. The second seeded IFK Helsinki actually finished third place in the playoffs and finished the season third place, thanks to them winning the third place game. TPS Turku, the third seed, took second, and then Tampere took the fourth seed. So Lukko in first, Turku in second as the third seed, Helsinki in third as the second seed, and then Tampere as the fourth seed in fourth. So that's the way the Finnish Liga ended. Obviously, once again, similar to the Vexure Lakers, Lukko just managed to turn it up when they really needed to the most. And once again, that's what a championship winning team does. So congratulations to them. And I believe Turku is going to the Champions Hockey League, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So once again, pretty decent consolation prize for the team that loses in the final. And yeah, that's the Finnish Liga done. So as you can see, guys, we're really blitzing through these leagues now. We've only got 2 more to talk about before we talk about the Champions Hockey League. So let's just move on to the next one, and that is the Swiss National League. Now, this one was one of the more interesting ones up until about the semi-final round, I think we would make the argument, because EV Zug, the first seed, was absolutely dominant in the regular season. The National League obviously switched to their points per games played because obviously they had a lot of issues with the pandemic and teams having to postpone games. They decided, right, let's do it by points per games played, so that if there's any discrepancies in the number of games that are played per team, that we still have a fair form of competition in order to decide the final rankings in the regular season. EV Zug, whether it would have been the normal structure, which is based on points, obviously, in the standings, or this new points per game, they absolutely dominated their competition. They were the hands-down winners.
They were so far ahead. I mean, they played all 52. I mean, to be honest, most of the teams played the 52. Zug, just for reference, finished with a record of 46-6 from their 52 games. 119 points. The second place, Lugano, also played all 52 of theirs, and they finished on 92. So Zug finished 27 points clear of anybody else
place. It's not as if they
second place.
It's literally like they're not even finished that to secure themselves a berth in the playoffs. That's literally between first and second place in the entire league.
In the 9. So they finished with 9 games ahead of second place in a 52-game season. So almost 20% ahead of anybody else. So it's no surprise really that they blitzed their way. Well, they got the bye. Bern gave them a bit of a challenge. They needed 6 games to get past Bern, the 9th seed. Of course, you can never kind of really can't burn out.
No.
Although, it was 2-2, and then again, Zug just turned the switch, really. And then coming up against the 10th seed Rapperswil Yalona Lakers. Again, Rapperswil, they got it. Well, they won game 3 by 2 goals to 1, but they kind of never really stood a chance against Zug. Zug, for reference, more than doubled the points that Rapperswil got in the regular season. The other side of the bracket was more kind of the mid-table, and it was Genevieve Servette, the 6th seed, who managed to sweep Zurich by 3 games to nothing in the other semi-final to get into that final against Zug. But again, when you've got first seed versus 6th seed, and especially when Zug was so dominant, it's not really surprising. Although Servette did give them a run for their money. The first game was only 1-0, and the second game was 2-1.
Wow. Okay.
So it was close. It was only the third game that was 5-1 that you thought maybe potentially that was a bit closer to what you'd expect, although there were 2 power play goals and an empty net goal in the final period there. So, credit to Servette, but, they were on for the chance of either, winning the final and getting into the Champions Hockey League, but Zurich, who, were swept by Servette in the semi-final, ended up getting that spot.
Absolutely, and I think we could make the argument that Chris and I were really enjoying the Swiss National League playoffs because obviously the 9th seed makes it through to the quarterfinal round. Rapperswil makes it all the way to the semi-finals as the 10th seed. The other semi-final bracket was the 5th and 6th seed in the playoffs. So obviously there was a lot of opportunities for an underdog to come and steal the title from, you could make the argument, a more deserving team. And I think the argument could be made that Zug had one of the easier run-ins to the championship compared to some of these other teams, compared to, say, the KHL, the SHL, the Finnish Liga, even the Czech Extraliga, for example. Like, they had a much easier run-in because there was no point at the playoffs where they played a team above the 6th seed in the playoffs. So you could make that argument. Yeah, go for it.
I mean, you could, but then you've got to remember that a team like Rapperswil, who beat the 2nd seed Lugano 4-1 in the quarterfinals, are fully there on merit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They won 4 straight games against Lugano because Lugano took the first game. They won 4 straight games. So it's not as though yes, it's an easier route, but at the same time, the 10th seed are completely there on merit, and they've knocked out the 2nd seed to get there. So they're going to be full of confidence and really going for it. And, none of those games, I don't think any of the players at Zug would ever say those games were easy.
No, of course not.
But I know what you mean. It was potentially easier than, coming up first seed against 2nd seed.
Absolutely, that was what I was going to lead on to. Whilst the argument could be made that based on the playoff seedings that they faced, the fact that they didn't play a team that finished higher than 6th place in the regular season standings, you could make the argument that they had an easier run or they played somewhat weaker teams. But then again, you can also make the argument that the playoffs is a completely different beast. It's a completely different season, and once you make it to the playoffs, anything can happen at that point. So
and I think the interesting thing with Swiss playoffs as well, it's not, I've literally only just picked this up looking at the Flash Scores bracket, is that because you're given the earlier the thing to it, so that you end up with, so how Zug, it was set up so that Zug would get the easiest route through. So in that first round between Davos and Bern, it was expected that the 8th seed goes through, and in the BL Rapperswil, it was expected that the 7th seed goes through. Because the 7th seed would, or in this case the 10th seed, but the 7th seed would play the 2nd seed and the 1st seed would play the 8th seed, because they're in the same half of the bracket, you would get, in the other half of the bracket, it was guaranteed that 3rd seed or down got to the final. You couldn't have 3rd seed versus 2nd seed because Zug would have played Lugano in the semi-finals.
That's really interesting. I wonder why they've done it like that specifically then. Yeah, that's a really good point, Chris. I never really realised that you could never have...
I don't know if that's always the case or not.
No, absolutely. I mean, that obviously we're not the most expert on the history of the Swiss National League or anything like that. But yeah, like you mentioned, the fact that we've seen so many other leagues have a 1 and 2, like the Swedish Hockey League just had a 1 and 2 matchup. We saw the Czech Extraliga have a 1 and 2 matchup in the finals. So many other leagues in Europe have finished off this season, whether that be due to the strange circumstances, or whether that be due to, just the hierarchy of the leagues, 1 and 2 making it to the finals, and typically the first seed wins. So yeah, the fact that the first and second seed would have had to have met in the semi-finals, and they would obviously had to have played a team that was at least third. That's really interesting. I never quite realised that. But speaking of...
No, I mean, in the 18-19 season, it was 1 versus 2, according to Elite Prospects. So I don't know if it was just a this series thing, but then in the 17-18 season, which I absolutely love, the Zurich Lions were the champions, but they finished 7th in the regular season.
Oh, wow.
And Lugano, who they faced in the final, finished 4th.
Oh, wow, the 4th versus 7th seed. That's what we wanted this year. Yeah. We wanted the 10th seed versus the 5th seed or the 6th seed. That would have been great. So I saw a tweet, I think, from the Swiss League, or from one of the teams of the Swiss League, or the Swiss League had retweeted something, basically saying how this championship was somewhat of a long time coming for EV Zug. Now, I remember us discussing it yesterday, Chris, but I can't quite remember the stats surrounding it, because It was
Zug's...
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, so this was Zug's second title. Their last one was in 1998.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, so it has been quite a while.
But they got to the final in 2017 and 2019. So they've been to the final 3 times in the last 5 years, but this was their first championship in that time. And their first for 23 years.
Yeah, so absolutely. That really was a long time coming, and obviously facing all of those defeats in the final round, kind of being good enough to get there, but not good enough to clinch the trophy. That's got to be quite disheartening. But the fact that the team, bounced back, and that's what makes great championship teams. They have to go through that sacrifice first. Like, talk about any sports team and, the big dynasties that you see within sports. Obviously, whether Zug becomes a dynasty or not, it remains to be seen. But those big dynasties that win back-to-back championships, like 4 championships in 5 years, you always find that they lose out really close to the final just before they go on their incredible run. And it teaches them, this is what we need to do. Like, we faced that heartbreak, and we need to... We'll do everything in our power to make sure we never feel that again, and we know what it takes to get to this level. Now we just need to give it even more. So congratulations to Zug. Obviously, a playoff champion crowned. I mean, I don't think anybody would have been surprised to see them win the playoffs in the National League, given how dominant they were in the regular season. And yeah, another champion has been crowned for this season. So let's move on to, last but by no means least, the German DEL, who have also finished their playoffs, and they become the last league for us to look at that have finished their playoffs. So once this one's done, ladies and gents, the domestic season for the 2020/21 season is all wrapped up. So we've obviously talked about the quarterfinals and the semi-final round. Where did we leave the final round off last week, Chris?
So the final round last week, we left it at 1-0 to Wolfsburg, who were, one game away from winning the DEL title. So then there was a game when we recorded last week, but it started at 6:30 just after we finished. And Eisbären Berlin won that one by 4-1 to tie it up, sent it to a deciding game, which was on the 7th. It was last Friday. And it was a really close game. And Berlin won it by 2-1 in order to take the title. They were the first seeds, and they took the title. They scored less than 2 minutes in at 1:49, but that lead lasted only 25 seconds before Wolfsburg tied it up, and they went in at the end of 20 minutes, tied at a goal each. Then in the second period, Berlin took the lead at 3 minutes and 19 into the second period, and that was the final goal of the game. It was really quite, you kind of surprised. What we've seen in these kind of deciding games is, it gets quite physical, the body's thrown quite a bit, there's quite a few penalties. In the third period, when Wolfsburg still only down by the 1 goal, there was only 1 penalty in the final period, and it actually went to Berlin, and it went to Zach Boychuk, who a lot of people will know.
Yes.
Zach Boychuk with 34 points in 34 games for Berlin this season. Got the only penalty of that final period.
Wow, he had a really good playoffs then. But I think, Chris, the most important thing that people need to know when it comes to Zach Boychuk is how many Twitter followers did he gain during the DL playoffs, Chris? So for those of you who don't know and aren't aware of the whole situation, Zach Boychuk, his Twitter account has been very prolific amongst hockey fans for essentially mass following a bunch of hockey fans, then tweeting out a bunch of links and kind of affiliation links and ads and sponsorships and stuff that he has associated with him, in the hopes that, he uses it as essentially an advertising platform, which, fair play to him. He's not playing in the NHL anymore. He's not making the most money that a hockey player could. So, earn that money wherever you want. And, so he followed me ages ago, I remember. Did he follow you, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he did. Just for reference, right? You know how, I'm not entirely, you're following 55 people.
Yeah.
I'm following, I think, a few more than that. I think I'm following around 100 people.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, I'm following 95 people. Right. Zach Boychuk is following 582,000 people.
Yeah. So basically, I'm like I said, or like I said when we tried to record this yesterday, I don't think it's Zach Boychuk personally following all of these people. I think he's got a management team behind him who just sits on his Twitter and just mass follows as many people as they can. And then after a certain while, because I think you get you aren't allowed to unfollow a certain, or there's a certain limit that you can have per day of the amount of accounts that you can follow or unfollow or something like that. So maybe because he's verified, it might be slightly different as well, but I don't know. But yeah, so he's been very prolific with following people. He followed me ages ago before I even realized what his whole shtick was. And then I messaged him thanks for the follows. That's really cool. But then afterwards I realized, he does this to literally everyone. And then Chris messaged me it must have been quite a notable time afterwards being Zach Boychuk followed me. And I was just
it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's don't hold out much hope. He's just wanting to sell DraftKings sponsorships to you, which is kind of ironic given what we do on the podcast. But anyway, so yeah, now you mentioned, Chris, that there was something you wanted to tell me regarding a good friend of our show.
Yes. Mr. Anthony Russell, who I know listens to this every week, was slightly peeved and apparently dropped a spoon about you calling Berlin the Ice Bears last week.
Okay.
There's no such thing as an ice bear; it's a polar bear.
Right.
And I watched his stream and was commenting on his stream yesterday, and he says, "And how difficult is it really to say Ice Baron?" Or Ice Baron, or however, I've probably butchered that. So Isbaron, Berlin.
I've got a response to that, Chris. Now I can obviously understand that Isbaron, or however you pronounce it, we're not German, we're trying our best. Isbaron Berlin, obviously that I would imagine in German that might mean polar bear, but you know the DEL, right, Chris? You know what it stands for, right?
Yeah.
You know what
the Deutschland Ice Hockey or Eishockey Liga or something.
Yeah,
it's around that.
So the ice hockey or Eishockey, however it's pronounced, it's spelt the exact same way as Eisbären Berlin. So that's where I've taken it from, and obviously that means ice hockey. It doesn't mean polar hockey. So I've gone okay. So it means the Ice Bears because that's where I've seen that being used before.
I can see your logic to that.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see
obviously,
apparently he would.
I'll go for it.
I was going to say, apparently he will fight you in any car park about it.
Oh, really? I mean, obviously,
so.
Obviously he speaks German, so he's going to win. He's right.
Exactly.
No doubt he's right, but just to be stubborn, I'm going to keep calling it the Berlin Ice Bears. You know what? Now that he's brought me up on it, I'm just going to want to say it even more. So, Anthony, I'm going to call it...
I knew that would be
I'm going to call it the Berlin Ice Bears for the rest of this podcast's existence, and it's all your fault.
Fortunately, we now have a few months where you don't need to mention them.
No, I'll just sit there on my Eastside Hockey Manager streams going, oh, hi, Anthony, Berlin Ice Bears, Anthony. But anyway, congratulations to the Berlin Ice Bears, or Eisbären Berlin, the Berlin Polar Bears, whatever you want to call them. Congratulations to them. They have won the DL Championship. Unfortunately for Wolfsburg, that means they don't get a place in the Champions Hockey League, do they, Chris, as far as I'm aware? Which it is a bit of a shame for them, considering they came one win away from, winning the championship, getting a place amongst Europe's finest teams. Because I believe it's, isn't it Ingolstadt? Oh no, it's Bremerhaven and...
So there's 4 teams from the DL, which of course I will, go into.
I've got the list coming up next, so we can roll through them.
I'm doing it off the logos. I'm going to try and impress myself by doing it off all the logos.
So that is officially the final league to have rounded up in Europe as of this season. So, Chris, we've made it through to the end of the 2020/21 Europe hockey season. I think we'll have a bit more of a discussion about it at the end of the episode because we've got a few more things to talk about.
Yeah.
Kind of wrap up the season, how it went and everything like that. But before we do that, the Champions Hockey League, we've alluded to it all season long. We've especially alluded to it these last few weeks and all of the different teams that have qualified. So for those of you who are unaware, this is the list of qualified teams for the 2021/22 Champions Hockey League season. Now, they've done them in alphabetical order by country, which is really helpful. I'm very glad, and kind of it also explained the reasons as to why they have qualified, which is great. So I'll read you through them and keep you guys updated. But for those of you who've forgotten or who aren't aware or haven't listened to one of the previous episodes where we've given a description of what the Champions Hockey League is, if you're a soccer fan, football fan, whatever you want to call it, it's essentially the Champions League. I mean, surprise, surprise, it's basically called the same thing. It
is essentially that, yeah.
Yeah, but for those of you who don't follow soccer or football, which I don't blame you, then the Champions Hockey League is a inter-Europe competition. The only kind of big country in Europe that doesn't take part is Russia. They've got their own KHL and their own schedule, and they'd probably wipe the floor with this competition every single year.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised. I'm quite glad that they don't in some ways. But it's a inter-Europe competition. 32 teams from 13 different countries all take part in a kind of round-robin group stage each. There's lots of different groups that take part, and then it eventually leads to the winners or the winners of the playoffs. It goes regular season round-robin stage to the playoffs. Playoffs are done. The winner gets the Champions Hockey League trophy, and they're crowned the best team in Europe. So that's how it usually works. And just for reference, every single time except once, a team from Sweden has won it, and most times it's been a specific team, but we'll talk about them in a minute. So this is the complete list. I will take you through them. So in Austria, the Ice Hockey League, one of these teams isn't actually Austrian, but they're part of this league, so it's fine. We have KAC Klagenfurt, the playoff champions, getting a spot. HC Bolzano, the Italian side, the regular season champions, so they get a spot as well. And then Red Bull Salzburg is the third and final team from Austria, as they are the higher ranked semi-finalist. Then from Belarus, who are one of the minor sort of challenge leagues in the tournament, they have Junost Minsk turning up to the tournament. The Czech Republic get 3 different teams this year. They have Oceleri Trinec, who were the playoff champions, HC Sparta Prague, who were the regular season champions, and BK Mlada Boleslav, who were the third place team during the regular season. You'll notice with a lot of these leagues where there's 3, 4, even 5 teams taking part, the majority of the kind of 3rd to 5th teams, they're usually teams that have played well during the regular season. It's more based on regular season performance as opposed to playoff performance. However, if a lower seeded team that wouldn't have made the Champions Hockey League during the regular season wins the playoffs, then they get the spot instead because, they just won the championship and they're considered champions. It kind of makes sense, right? Then in Denmark, you have Sondersjæk, who were the last Continental Cup winners. The Continental Cup is kind of like a much smaller version of the Champions Hockey League, I guess, where there's lots of several different teams around Europe that compete. It's kind of the next level down, and whoever wins the Continental Cup gets a place in the Champions Hockey League, regardless of where they're from. So, for example, the Nottingham Panthers from England have won it before. Sondersjæk from Denmark are winning it this year. So, leagues or countries that have a team, or usually have one team that go, the Continental Cup gives them usually a second team to go. So the Continental Cup didn't take place last year, so the last winners was Sondersjæk in 2019, so they get the place again this year. It's basically been pushed to this year. And my boys, the Rungsted Sea Capitals of the Danish Metal-Ligaen, the regular season and playoff champions, they get the spot for Denmark. Then the Finnish Liga, we have Lukko, who were the regular season and playoff champions, IFK Helsinki, who were the second place team in the regular season, as well as TPS Turku and Tappara, who were the third and fourth place team in the regular season. We've talked about that already earlier this episode. France, you have the Rouen Dragons. Obviously, their season was shortened due to their situation and the infrastructure of their league. Rouen, who finished the league as the top team in the French Ligue Magnus, they go through to the Champions Hockey League. In Germany, you have 4 different teams. You have the Berlin Ice Bears. There you go, Anthony, you're welcome. Who are obviously the playoff and regular season champions. Adler Mannheim were the best team in Group South. Remember, the DEL had the North Group, including Berlin, and the South Group, including Adler Mannheim. Then Red Bull Munich and the Bremerhaven Penguins both get a spot in the Champions Hockey League due to them being the higher and lower runner-up teams with the best points per games played. Norway, who had to cut their season short, had Frisk Asker, the regular season winners of their league, because obviously it was postponed. Poland had Jastrzębie, who were the playoff champions. They were the second seed in the regular season, but because they only get one spot, they've gone via the playoff champions. And of course, they beat Krakow, the 6th seed, in the final playoff round. And wow, it feels like a long time since we talked about the Polish league, but there they are. In Sweden, you have 5 different teams. You have Frölunda, who are the CHL champions, the reigning champions back from, was it 2019 or 2020? It would have been 2019, right?
Well, it'd be 19 because they didn't do it last year.
Exactly. So Sweden, the Frölunda Indians, they've won it 4 out of 6 times recently or whatever. So Frölunda, they're basically the team to beat. Chris and I often joke it's called the Frölunda Hockey League because, they always win it. Then, of course, you have the Växjö Lakers, the regular season and playoff champions. Then you have Rögle, Leksand, and Skellefteå, who were the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place teams in the regular season. We're almost there, guys. Switzerland, you have EV Zug, the regular season and playoff champions for the National League. Then you have HC Lugano, Fribourg Gotteron, Lausanne, and Zurich as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place teams in the regular season. Ukraine, they're getting their first team in the Champions Hockey League. They're replacing Slovakia due to a wild card Challenger League situation there. There's been some rumours about what's been going on in Slovakia. We don't really know for sure what's going on there. But HC Donbass Donetsk was the playoff champion in Ukraine. So the Ukrainian League make their first appearance at the Champions Hockey League. And good luck to them, I would say. And last but by no means least, we have from the United Kingdom, the team that finished the previous proper Elite Ice Hockey League season as the champions back in 2019, the Cardiff Devils. They finished first place in the EIHL season during 2018-19 or something like that. And the Cardiff Devils get their spot again because they didn't get the chance to compete last year. And of course, we had the Elite Series, but it wasn't considered a proper regular season because obviously 2/3 of the teams didn't take part in the league. So after some long-winded explanations, those are the 32 teams taking part in the Champions Hockey League this season. Chris, is there anything you want to mention about these teams?
So the interesting thing, we'll go on to the drawing of the pots in a moment.
Yes.
The teams that have a lot the countries that have a lot of teams taking part, you're looking at Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Finland, Czech Republic, and Ice Hockey League, and Austria.
Yep.
Those are the founding leagues, so they get more teams.
Yes.
And the number of teams that they get is determined by their league ranking of the Champions Hockey League over the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Very quite complicated, but essentially, Sweden are currently deemed the best country, then Switzerland, then Germany, Finland, Czech Republic, and then Austria, which is why Sweden get 5, as do Switzerland, Germany and Finland get 4, and the Czech Republic and Austria get 3.
I find it very interesting that Germany is ranked higher than Finland in those rankings. Obviously, they had a team go to the final recently, but like Finland have had a champion. They had, Jyväskylä managed to win it. So obviously, isn't it like over the last 2 or 3 seasons that they do the rankings?
It is. It's done over the last 4 years. So Germany have 217 points and Finland have 212.
Oh wow, that's close then.
It is, but obviously, what you've got to bear in mind is that yes, Finland, had a champion, but it's really skewed because if Finland have a champion, but the other 4 teams all get knocked out in the group stage, they get barely any points.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so the points they got from 4 seasons ago are now only worth 25% of those points.
Right.
So that your more recent attributes are obviously worth more than what you did 4 years ago.
Which absolutely makes sense. There's a lot of stuff around the Champions Hockey League. I really like the way that they do it. A lot of it you sit there and go, that makes sense. It's nice to see a league that you just look at and go, most of the stuff that they do makes sense and it's good. Well done.
Yeah, Sweden... So the maximum number of points you can have over a 4-year period is 250.
Okay.
Sweden currently have 249.
Well, that's pretty close then. Not quite perfect. Come on, step it up, Sweden.
Yeah, they've been the best. They've been the best ranked side for the last 3 years in a row, and we're only beaten by Switzerland 4 years ago. So,
oh wow,
yeah, Sweden could get the complete 250 points. So he obviously gets closer the further down you go when you get into the Challenger Leagues, but when they only get 1 spot anyway, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be really nice if, I don't know if the Champions Hockey League do this, I don't think they do, but, these Challenger Leagues, if they reach a certain amount of points, then they get like, it's kind of like a promotion relegation system for the number of teams that like each country gets. That would be really cool, because then it gives those challenger leagues a chance to go, oh, you're being consistently strong in our competition, we will reward you by giving you another team. So like, for example, if, and this is a hypothetical situation, but say Austria, like their next 3 seasons, I know they're a founder league and that there's a different thing around that, but the Austrian league, the next 3 years, they completely nosedive. All of their teams don't make it out of the group stage, all finish like bottom of their group, right? But then, say somebody like, I don't know, the United Kingdom, we could use the United Kingdom because they're the highest challenger league, so it's probably the best place to start.
Belarus are.
Oh, sorry, Belarus. Okay, we'll go Belarus then for the sake of the argument. Belarus, they have 3 consecutive seasons, or 4 consecutive seasons, where UNOS Minsk or one of their other champions, they make it through to the second round of the playoffs every single year. Like, it would be really cool if they were like, okay, well, Austria, you lose a team because you've been consistently not good, and reward Belarus with having another team. I think that would be a really cool way to do it. Maybe they'll think about... I
can see where you're going with that. Yeah, I mean, let's just take the 1920 season. Obviously, there was nothing this year, 2021. The 1920 season, they finished it up. So Belarus had a ranking of 75 points in that one. So the way the league rankings work is they take the points per game. Sorry, they take the number of points you've got and the number of games you played and divide one by the other to give you the number of points per game. And then they rank the countries by points per game.
Oh, okay, right.
So obviously, if you have a team that goes to the final, you obviously get more points, but you're playing more games.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had, let's take, for example, that Austria scenario, and they played, 10 games in their, because there's 3 teams, you had all the teams together. So say they played 12 games, but they got 12 points.
Yeah.
That's 1 point per game.
Mm-hmm.
Say Belarus, they only played 6 games in their group, but they finished with 8 points. That would be like 1.2 points per game. So they'd rank higher than Austria for that season.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, I think if that's consistent over, so we'll take this 4-year span, for example, because obviously that's how they rank it. So if they, after say 3 or 4 years, they go, okay, well, this has happened consistently every single year. Let's take a team away from Austria because they're obviously not doing that well. They kind of like drop down to say Challenger League status, and then Belarus takes their place as kind of the next highest league and get more than one team take part. Obviously, the Champions Hockey League has only been around for less than a decade at this point. So, you know, like they're still very much in their early stages and still trying to figure out a lot of stuff. And maybe that is something that happens in the future. Obviously, at the moment, especially with the pandemic and everything, they're trying to establish like the foundation of what the league is. And no, obviously, like the way they do it, like I said, a lot of it makes sense. I'm just kind of spitballing ideas for the future that could be really cool. like bringing in a promotion relegation system for countries might be a really interesting idea. And it keeps it competitive for those lower ranked teams. Obviously, we're UK hockey fans here, and we keep an eye on whichever of our teams make it through to the Champions Hockey League. And we sit there and go, you know, if our team makes it through to the final every single year, obviously highly unlikely, but you never know, they make it through to the final every single year for like 3 years, but because we're a Challenger League, we still only get one team take part. Like, that doesn't really seem very fair when, you know, Austria, Sweden, even Switzerland or something, maybe all of their teams crash and burn in the group stage, you know, but they still get that many teams because they're a founder league because they got there first. You know, it's just kind of like, it's an interesting idea.
Don't forget as well that the Champions Hockey League, whether they're still planning it or not, but they're looking to reduce the number of teams in it as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, isn't it like 24?
They want to take it down from 32 to 24.
Yeah.
And no country can have more than 3 teams. So, I mean, that's 6 gone from the highest place founding league straight away. So it'll be interesting to see what they do about that. But yeah, so the draw is on Wednesday.
Yes, the group draw.
At 5 o'clock. Yes, it starts at 5 o'clock our time GMT. It's now also on Free Sports. I've just seen on Twitter.
Oh, good. Okay, we can watch it from there then.
You can watch it from there while we're obviously doing it live. Won't be able to show it.
No, of course not.
But maybe I'll make up some graphic or something because you know what I'm like with graphics.
Oh, you love a good graphic, Chris.
make up some graphics and then share my screen with you, and then you can see me drag the teams into their groups or something like that. We'll figure something.
That could be fun. Let's do that.
Yeah, okay, I'll work on that then. So yes, we've got 5 pots this year because the Champions Hockey League still didn't get back to me about their seeding and their clarification.
God, Champions Hockey League, don't you know who he is? He's Chris bloody Gadsby.
Still doesn't make sense to me, but I'll explain it here. So pot 5, there's going to be 8 groups of 4.
Right.
We'll clarify that to start.
So before you start, I've got the article from the Champions Hockey League up here. Do you want me to just... so the group stage draw procedure. So to accommodate the needs of the national teams involved in the final Olympic qualification tournament, if you can obviously lose some more information about this. I'm just reading off the website, and then you can talk about all the pots. I just wanted to add this in just in case anybody was unsure, because I don't quite understand it either, so Chris is going to educate me as well. So there's a lot of... there's the national teams involved in final Olympic qualifications because they want to go through to the Winter Olympics. The CHL board has decided to slightly adapt the draw procedure for this year's group stage draw. So, as Chris said, 8 teams from countries participating in the FOQ, Final Olympic Qualification, will be allocated into their own pot number 5, and drawn into 2 separate groups of 4, which will not play their CHL games during the final Olympic qualification tournament on the weekend of the 26th to the 29th of August. The other 24 teams taking part in the league this year will be allocated into 4 pots drawn by the standard procedure into 6 groups of 4. So basically every year, all of the teams get put into this little kind of like lottery ball situation, and then they're picked out and they're put into specific pots or groups of 4 teams where they then play their group stage to then try and go through to the playoffs. And usually the way they do it, Chris, I think you said that it was slightly different this year, so I'll let you allude to that in a second. Usually with previous years in Champions Hockey League, they don't let 2 teams from the same country compete in the same group. So Chris, I'm sorry to jump in there. Take it away. I've got the pots 1 to 4 and the pot 5 thing here, so talk us through it.
Yep. So pot 5 is being drawn first. They're doing it backwards. So pot 5 is being drawn first, and that involves, as you said, the 3 sides from the Ice Hockey League and the Challenger Leagues: France, Norway, Poland, Denmark, Ukraine, which are countries that are taking part in final Olympic qualifying.
Yeah.
Now, there is still league protection this year, apart from in pot 5, because they are being drawn into 2 groups of 4 with 3 teams from Austria. You can't have league protection.
Yes.
Now, what I'm finding interesting is that the pot 5 is going to not clash with the final Olympic qualifying.
Yes. End of August.
However, Ukraine, HC Donbass are in pot 5, but Ukraine aren't in final Olympic qualifying.
Okay.
Whereas Minsk from Belarus and Sondersjijk from the Danish league are in the main pot and will have to contend with final Olympic qualifying.
Okay.
Don't quite understand it, I'll be honest.
Is it because if they took all of those teams out, then pots 1 to 4 would be unbalanced, perhaps? And it might overcomplicate
Not really,
things?
because you'd think you'd just swap Ukraine. I mean, it's never going to work because you've got 2 of them, but you think you'd just swap. If it was me, and this is going based off elite prospects, only 2 of the players in the Belarusian squad going to the World Championships next week play in Belarus. Most of them are in the KHL.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So I can kind of understand why they don't need to be in there.
Yeah, because obviously Dynamo Minsk is in the KHL, and that's where most of the top Belarusian talent goes. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yes,
but Ukraine aren't in final Olympic qualifying. So what I would have done is swap Ukraine with Sondersjijk, the Continental Cup winners, and then all your countries, but they're not doing that.
Yeah, so, that sounds like it would make the most sense, especially because Ukraine isn't, like, the whole 26th to the 29th of August doesn't apply to them because they're not in that final stage. So, but if Denmark are, then that would make more sense. Obviously, there is a reason as to why they've done it like this. Maybe because they've said teams from Challenger leagues, whereas obviously Sondersjijk isn't from a Challenger league, is it? It's a Continental Cup winner.
But the reason is, originally, when Slovakia was still in the Champions Hockey League, they are in final Olympic qualifying and they went in that pot 5. And then Slovakia went out and Ukraine went in, and they just did a straight swap rather than moving Sondersjijk into the pot 5 as well. Because that's what confused me, is that Ukraine got put into that pot and then they didn't, they're not in final Olympic qualifying, but hey ho, that's what the Champions Hockey League have decided to do.
Yeah.
So pot 5 contains the Ice Hockey League teams, so Klagenfurt, Bolzano, and Red Bull Salzburg.
Mm-hmm.
They also contain Rouen, Frisk Asker from Norway, Yastreby, the Rungsted Sea Capitals, and HC Donbass.
You know what? That's
those two.
To be honest, like those two groups are probably going to be some of the most competitive in the tournament this year, especially because we're going to have like groups where 2 Swedish teams are going up against each other, or maybe even 2 Finnish teams or 2 Swiss teams. Like, obviously, well, to be fair, they do have the league protection with pots 1 to 4, so maybe not so much 2 teams from each country, but, we're going to have a team like a Swedish team, a Finnish team, and a Swiss team going up against, the Belarusian team or the UK team or Sondersjag.
Yes.
So, like...
It does make it, it does. So, what you're guaranteed... it will be 2 teams from each group go into the knockout stage.
Yeah.
So what that means this year is you're guaranteed to have a Challenger League in the knockout stages.
Well,
because
because obviously, you're right.
Even if the 3 ice hockey leagues go through, you're going to have one of Rouen, Frisk Asker, Yastreby, Rungsted, or Donbass in the knockout stages.
You know what? I think this could be a really good idea, like, moving forwards. Like, to have one of the Challenger Leagues essentially be guaranteed, like, one of the Challenger Leagues, regardless of where it's from, based on, like you said, based on this whole setup, there is going to be a team from either France, Ukraine, Norway, Poland, or Denmark that makes it through to the Champions Hockey League playoffs. I like that idea. It's kind of like...
You could almost do with the Challenger Leagues being in their own groups, because there's 8 Challenger Leagues, 7 plus the Continental Cup winner. And that way you'd end up with 4 Challenger Leagues getting through to the knockout stages.
True, but then again, obviously the other argument could be made that, remember when the Nottingham Panthers made it through to the playoffs, it kind of, if they're playing teams that are kind of similar level of competition, it kind of takes some of the magic out of that. So for those of you who don't know,
does a bit.
A couple of years ago, was it the 2017-18 season, I think?
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah, the Panthers they won their group.
Yeah, the Panthers won their group. They beat Mountfield HK from the Czech Extraliga. They beat TPS Turku from the Finnish Liga. Who was the other team they beat?
Bern, wasn't it?
Yeah, SC Bern from the Swiss National League. Now, those 3 teams, 2 of them are back in... Well, no, sorry, only Turku's back in the competition this year, but, like, they're all really good teams in Europe. So the fact that the Nottingham Panthers managed to beat... And I'm pretty sure they beat every single one of them at least once, right?
I think they did, yes.
I think it was Bern, they won both of the games. And then the other 2, they won, like they went 1-1-0 or something. But, like, that's a brilliant story for UK hockey. Like, that was such a huge deal over here. Like, every hockey fan, regardless of whether they were a Panthers fan or another fan of a different team, they were rooting for the Panthers on that run. Obviously, they got absolutely obliterated by the Zurich Lions in the first playoff round, which I think you could make the argument with, if you secure one challenger team always makes it through to the playoffs, then they're probably going to be demolished in that first round. But then again, that's probably likely to happen, whether that challenger team makes it, like, tops their group or not, or gets a playoff berth or not. At least you give them a chance to be like, okay, we have a chance for an underdog potentially every single year, which is quite a nice story. But obviously we're quite prone to supporting underdogs, so maybe that's something they go with in the future. It's very reminiscent of, when the NHL did their 1967 expansion, and they guaranteed that an expansion team made it through to the finals every single year for the first, 4 or 5 years, because of how they changed up the divisions. So, like, the Blues made it through to the finals, having just, made it into the league 2 years in a row, and they lost both times because they got destroyed by an original 6 team. Because then you have all the original 6 teams who are a similar level of competition fighting it out during the regular season or during the playoffs. And then you have all the expansion teams that are of a similar level fighting it out there. So that is an idea that could be done. So all the Challenger Leagues and the Continental Cup winner go into their 2 separate groups. Then you have, inter-league play, like the Swiss, the Finnish, the Austrian, the German, that would be a really good idea, actually. I hope that's an idea that they potentially consider in the future. But regardless, that's that.
Yeah. So then what they're going to do is they're going to draw backwards pot 4, pot 3, pot 2, pot 1. So we only get the top seeds going in right at the end.
Which I think is pretty cool. It adds the suspense.
It does a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'll run through the pots from 1 to 4, because that makes the most sense in terms of the finishing positions in the league.
Okay.
So these, don't forget, have league protection. So in pot 1 is all the top seeds. So you've got the Frölunda Indians as the reigning CHL champions.
Shock.
And the first team from Switzerland, from Sweden.
Yep.
They are like the top seed. And then you've got the winners of the 5 founding leagues, obviously excluding the Austrian league. Everything I'm saying now is obviously excluding Austria.
Yes.
So you've got the Vasya Lakers, Zug, the Berlin, Luko, and Ocelari Trinek from the Czech Extraliga. So they are all, pot 1 is basically all the national champions of the founding leagues in Frölunda.
Which makes complete sense.
Pot 2 is the second place teams in all of the founding leagues.
Makes sense.
So you've got Rögle, Lugano, Adler Mannheim, IFK Helsinki, and Sparta Prague from the 5 founding leagues. And then the 6th team in pot 2 is the third place side from Sweden, because Sweden is the highest ranked founding league.
Yeah.
Still following me?
Yes, I'm still following you. I'm with you.
Right. So then pot 3 is the third place side from the other 4 founding leagues.
Not including Sweden.
Not including Sweden, because their third place side went into pot 2.
Indeed.
And then the fourth place side from the 2 highest founding leagues, i.e. AIK Skellefteå from Sweden and Lausanne from Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
Right. And then in pot 4,
everybody else.
You've got the 4th placed side from the final 2 founding leagues. So you've got the Bremerhaven Penguins and Tappara Tampere from the Liga. You've got the 5th place side from the Swiss founding league. Because because of the SHL having Frölunda, only their top 4 got in rather than the top 5 from Switzerland, because obviously Frölunda takes 1 spot.
Yep.
Then you've got the Challenger Leagues of Minsk from Belarus, the Cardiff Devils, and the Continental Cup winners of Sondersjijk.
Okay, so that's pots 1 to 4, and then pot 5 is everybody else.
That's pots 1 to 4. And then pot 5 is that Olympic qualifying group that is going to get drawn first and just isn't within the main draw.
They're kind of their own separate entity. Yeah,
what it means is that Cardiff will come up against a founding league champion, a founding league 2nd place, and a founding league 3rd place.
Hey, Chris, Nottingham have done it once before, you know?
Well, they have.
And you know, Cardiff had a pretty good run last time round. Like, they obviously didn't win their group and they didn't go through to the playoffs, but remember there was a point halfway through the group stage where they were sitting in first place of their group. So, you know, like...
That is true.
They might be... And because Champions Hockey League is coming back, we might get some solid imports going to Cardiff. So, you know, I think it's a pretty good run for them.
The best case scenario, I suppose, is for Cardiff to get drawn against Trinek, Lexans, and Lausanne.
Yes, I would say so, yeah.
Those are the lowest ranked, because obviously there's league protection.
Yeah,
you kind of you want the 3rd place side from Sweden, it would coming out of pot 2, which is Lexans, which means you'd need the 4th place side from the Swiss National League, Lausanne, and then because then you can't have Sweden or Lausanne from pot 1, you're either going to have Berlin, Luko, or Trinek.
Berlin would be fun.
That's the best case. That's the best
Berlin
case
versus Cardiff would be pretty fun, though.
Yeah,
so I feel like the DL is probably the most comparable to the Elite League out of all of those leagues. Obviously, the DL is still head and shoulders above, but kind of talking like as close to as possible, the DL will probably be the closest. I'd like to see a game between Berlin and Cardiff. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and also then working backwards, we shouldn't have league clashes until towards the end. Whereas if we went the other way, you'd end up with a league clash every time and keep shifting it and shifting
Which is something that happens every single draw that they do.
Yeah. So I think the plan is that we'll do one live next week. We'll start, I think, at 5, because no doubt there'll be 15 minutes of talking before the draw actually starts.
And we can sit and have a chat. Yeah, we can sit and have a chat.
Exactly. So I think that's the plan. So 5 o'clock GM towards BST now, isn't it? Which is 6 o'clock on continental Europe.
Yeah. And it's also midday for anybody across the pond that might listen to this podcast.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a pretty decent time for everybody involved. I'm just going to have to remember that I'm doing that. It's one of those things.
I'll remind you,
because obviously we sit down here and we record, but like live streaming is like kind of different, you know. So you
have to set it up a bit differently, don't
indeed, you do. So yeah. So on that note, that's pretty much everything we really need to talk about today. I mean, Chris, we managed to make it to an hour. We said it was going to be a short one.
I know. I was just wondering.
Yeah, we managed to make it to about 59 minutes, an hour. So before we finish up, I just want to say, like, Chris, we made it to the end of the domestic season in Europe.
We did.
We've talked about it pretty much every single week since late August. I think we did our first episode last week of August. We really kicked off the show beginning of September, and we've seen leagues postponed, cancelled, Elite Series popping up, the DL turning up just before Christmas. We've seen postponements and the Liga going off for 2 weeks. We've talked about the World Championships practically every single week. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but as the domestic season's wound up, I think both us and the entire European hockey system deserves a bit of a round of applause because, you know, all of the obstacles that they faced, they managed to fight through them. Only one league didn't manage to get to the end of their season. They had to shut it down straight off. Well, shut it down kind of right in the midst. All of them all the other ones either had postponed games but managed to brush past it, or they kind of readjusted their schedule to kind of accommodate the end of the season. And we obviously got the Elite Series, which wasn't the most perfect Elite League season this year, but luckily yesterday we've had some news that they've got plans for next season. It should hopefully all be going back to normal, so that's really good to see. We just hope that the Glasgow Clan have their arena to play, and that would be really nice.
Yes.
But
yeah.
Other than that, so well done, Europe. You did a good job. I know it was tough going, but we were here every step of the way watching you and telling you how wonderful you are for keeping going. So we've got a few more episodes to go in kind of season 1 of the Europuck podcast. Obviously, Champions Hockey League next week. Got World Championships to talk about. And yeah, in about a month's time, I'll be on the other side of the world. So we'll figure out where we're going from there. Yeah, so on that note, I think it's a really good place to end today's episode of the Europuck podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, whether you're listening via the audio version, whether you're watching the video version via YouTube. We really appreciate you taking a moment to check us out. Well, it's more than a moment. It's been an hour. So if you want to keep updated on all things Europuck podcast or send us your thoughts, opinions, or questions, either from today's show or for our live stream next week, you can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Europuck podcast. Go and give us a follow. We're pretty cool. And if you enjoyed listening to either or both of your hosts today, we really hope you did, because, you know, as I said, it's been an hour. Then you can follow myself on Twitter at OddmanRushYT or Chris at Chris_Gadsby. Thanks again for watching and or listening, guys, and we'll see you again next time. Have a good one, folks.